So you see, intellectual activity is an act of imagination. It's like, Harry Potter and stuff. You have to let go of what you believe and start to acquire a different way of looking at the world. And you cannot do that if you hang on to your own preconceptions. And it doesn't have to be true or false. This is a misconception. There are many different ways of looking at the world, and one acquires perspective by simply being a neutral bystander. This is what it means to be pluralism. So after you acquire a variety of different perspectives, then only you can piece together and get a three-dimensional view. So this time I'm going to present a very different perspective on the world and on economic theory from one that you are accustomed to. So that's why I was preparing you. So the first question to ask is, why are we here? I mean, what is the purpose of my life? Now, unfortunately, throughout the course of this your education, you have never encountered this question. And yet, how can we decide what I should do, what I should not do, what kind of economic policy there should be, social systems, everything, if we don't even know the purpose of life? As the Cheshire cat said to Alice, Alice asked her, which way should I go? So she said, well, where do you want to get to? So she said, well, it doesn't matter. So she said, it doesn't matter which path you choose. All paths are equivalent if you have no purpose. So social science, all of it depends on the answer to the question of what is the purpose of my life. Now, why did we not, we have all been studying social science for years and years, and yet we haven't focused on this question. Why? Because there is a predetermined answer. The answer has been given, and the answer is that there is no purpose. So, famous Bertrand Russell quote that whatever we do, however well we do it, nobody is looking, nobody cares. Everything will end when the universe ends. Life was created by an accident, and it will end by an accident. So life is meaningless. There is no purpose. So once this answer is decided upon, then one doesn't discuss it anymore. But this lack of meaning affects everything that we do. This is also one answer. It is not that this is the answer. There are many answers. If we take this particular answer, it will lead us to certain ways of thinking about the world and looking at the world. So now, actually, this is a new answer. The world never had, throughout history, human beings have had purpose and have had fantastic battles, both physical and intellectual, about this question of purpose. It is only in this very, very brief modern era that this idea that life could be without purpose emerged. It's part of the existentialist philosophy. It's very, very recent. So how did this happen? Well, there is this process called the Great Transformation, which took place in Europe, in which a traditional society was converted to a market society by the processes of industrialization and by many other forces which worked simultaneously and are too complicated to discuss at this time. But basically, in traditional society was an organic whole. We all worked together for a common purpose. There was the idea of a community and a society, the values of being self-sufficient, being responsible for each other, and having a limited right to property. That is, my right to property was constrained by allowing other people's to use it. It was more on the line of an amana, a trust, rather than an absolute right. That was the traditional society. When the transition took place, and this transition was not gradual or evolutionary, it was rather by a battle and by destroying traditional values that the modern market society came into existence. in which the society is no longer an organic whole. It consists of different groups fighting each other for power with no particular common values or purpose. Everyone is an individual free to act for himself. Everyone has his own vision and they need not have anything in common. As Thatcher said, expressing this idea, there is no society, it is just a collection of individuals. We all depend on the informal market for our needs, which doesn't exist as an entity, whereas in a traditional society, we depend on each other. And everybody has an absolute right to his property. So these are some of the features of the market society that came into existence as a result of the Great Transformation. Now, after the Great Transformation, Europeans have conducted an amazing experiment. The first one in human history was done in the 20th century. This idea that pursuit of wealth is a good thing, nobody ever believed it in all cultures, Chinese, Indians, Africans, take any culture and everybody universally thinks that pursuit of wealth as an end in itself is a harmful thing. Now, Keynes is a key to understanding what happened. He has a long quote from which I have an excerpt here, that the love of money is a disgusting morbidity. This was not his individual quirk, but that was widely believed. Nonetheless, this is very important, even though it is disgusting, it is a psychotic kind of a thing, we must cultivate it. This is the European experiment. Why? Because if everybody starts pursuing wealth, then wealth will accumulate, and that is the way that we will achieve heavens on earth. We will turn this earth into a paradise because there is nothing to hope for in the hereafter, of course. That's one of the elements. So this idea that let the people just gather the wealth and eventually everybody will benefit, this trickle-down idea is at the heart of Western economic thought. It cannot be removed from it. So now, one of the things to understand is that this great transformation, the values of a market society are antithetical. It cannot be done in a gradual evolutionary mode. They are enemies of each other. One cannot coexist with the other. So the great transformation did not take place in a step-by-step manner. It took place by a revolution. The traditional values were ruthlessly crushed. So just to understand very briefly this topic, which can be discussed at length and has been established by experiments, etc., that we have two sets of values within ourselves. One is a traditional social value, and one is a market value, and these two are antithetical to each other. They are opposed to each other. Just to understand it in one sentence, suppose that my mother cooks a very good meal for me, and I say, "Oh, Mother, this is a great meal. How much should I pay you for this?" So how ridiculous it sounds. This is just illustrates the conflict between market norms and social norms. So in the process of the Great Transformation, there was a vision of society that was lost. The idea that society is an organic whole, we can work together for common goals, this was dropped. And instead, a new vision of a secular society in which there are different groups with no commonalities. So the only thing that binds us together is that we agree to abide by a common set of laws. That is the rule of law, and the laws are arbitrary. Nobody actually believes that these laws are sacred anymore, because what is sacred to me is not sacred to you, and vice versa in a secular society. So nonetheless, these laws have to be treated as sacred, because if there is nothing sacred, then anything goes. So one artificially creates a human-made set of laws known to be deficient, and then one respects them as if they were the word of God, because this is the only way a secular society can work. So now, what have been the consequences of this pursuit of wealth, this mad rush to create heavens on earth by accumulating gold and silver? without any purpose. Well, wealth has indeed accumulated at a tremendous rate. That's called the hockey stick argument, that a hockey stick is flat for a long time and then it just jumps up. So if you look at the wealth, it has indeed worked exactly as the people who set off this experiment had hoped. But the consequences have been disastrous on many other fronts. Actually, you can say that this wealth is not being created out of nowhere. It is created by destroying natural wealth of many times, and what you destroy is a lot more than what you get. If you have a rainforest and you think of it as timber for furniture, well, certainly you get money for furniture, but the value of what you created is something that took millions of years to create, and trillions of dollars would not be able to recreate it. So it's just like the oil. We can count it as a cost, as a profit, but what is being destroyed is something which can never be recreated. So if you look at the wealth angle, then it seems like a great thing was happened. But if you look at all other dimensions of human existence, you see a tremendous amount of damage, a reverse hockey stick, in fact. So this is the capitalist picture, which shows the tremendous increase in wealth per capita, that wealth is flat up till the 19th century and then it suddenly shoots up. This is actually painting a tremendously failed experiment as a tremendously successful experiment. But if you look at the other side, the costs of it, then this is the number of species which have been destroyed. So we are living in a new era geographically, because so many animals, so many kinds of species have been destroyed that these used to happen in millions of years, which is happening in a century or two. And this is just one angle. If you look at climate, if you look at pollution of the ocean, the environment, I mean, things seem like the environmental scientists are saying that humanity might go out of existence in 2050. The environment might be so inhospitable. So, the question that I would like to pose is, can we reverse the Great Transformation? The Great Transformation says that everybody is in it for himself. There is no society. I am all alone and you are all alone. So, in this lonely and hostile world where you're trying to cut my throat if I'm not looking and I'm trying to cut yours, can we move to a more civilized world? And so this involves reversing the Great Transformation. How can we do that? This involves creating a collective vision for mankind as a whole. This concept of nation has proven to be deadly. The greatest wars in the history of mankind were done by nations, and this idea that I should die for my nations and I should make you die for yours, this hasn't turned out to be a very healthy idea for mankind as a whole. So it's no longer a good idea to be crafting vision for Pakistan. We should be thinking higher. And so this is not something that is new to history, but actually Marshall Hodgson writes about the venture of Islam, that Muslims succeeded in building a new form of society, and over centuries this society spread throughout most of the world, uniting all mankind under its ideals, which are the best that are available to mankind as a whole. So the idea that we want to unite mankind on the welfare of mankind, this is a very different idea from the capitalist idea, which leads to accumulation of wealth in the hands of 8 people. So what we would like to start out with some basic premises for creating a new vision along which we can try to unite mankind. These are visions that are built into the heart of every human being. So one of the elements of this, the first element, as every human being has infinite potential. Nobody, and Quran expresses it like this, that if you take one life, it is as if you have killed the entire planet, and if you save one life, it is as if you have saved the entire humanity. So this is telling us about how precious every single human life is. So we start with this as an axiom, which we believe that all human beings can buy into, and this is a collective vision. So then I cannot kill somebody because he is a Hindu or a Jew. All human beings are infinitely precious. So now it is our collective responsibility as together we must ensure that every child who is born receives the opportunity to develop the capabilities that are planted inside him or her. And so let us redefine prosperity from accumulating wealth to saying that a society is prosperous if every child, every human being has the opportunity to develop his potential, to develop his capabilities, and to develop his character. Now, once we take this as our goal, then there is no scarcity. If we are all care for each other, if we are all brothers and sisters, then there is no scarcity, because if you lack something, I will give it to you. And if I need something, I have 1,000 brothers I can ask from. I am rich even if I don't have anything in my pocket. So this kind of social capital, you might call it, is the essence of humanity. So how can we launch this revolution? So first we have to, just like reversing the great transformation, economists teach us that Y is equal to F of KL, that human beings are an input to the production of material objects, wealth. So this is actually a cruel inversion of priorities. Human beings are not an input into anything. Wealth is an input to the production of welfare for human beings. And so all the material that we have been given is a means to empower and enable man to develop their capabilities. And so this is what we need to look at. We don't want to count how much money has been created. We want to count how money is being used to enrich people's lives. This is not being done. So many people, actually Mahbub al-Haq's revolutionary insight was that human beings are the means and the ends of development. So if you want to create wealth, actually, if you empower human beings, they will create wealth. But maybe that wealth will not be of a form which is marketable. Maybe it will be art, maybe it will be literature, maybe it will be spiritual achievements which cannot be counted or quantified. So these are not things which can be counted in dollars. Unfortunately, this idea, the market society generates the idea that everything is for sale. But the traditional society considers that the most important things in life, like love, happiness, compassion, generosity, these are not for sale. And though market society generates cynicism, people think that no, everything is for sale. But actually, if you ask for blood donors to volunteer, to give to people who are needy, people will gladly volunteer. But if you ask that, I will pay you 5,000 rupees for a pint of blood, very few people will volunteer. So this idea that human beings are connected on a heart-to-heart basis, this is actually the truth about human beings, even though we have been taught to believe otherwise. So what are the consequences of redefining prosperity in this way? This is not an abstract, airy-fairy kind of thing. This has very down-to-earth, concrete, practical implications. So economics seeks to acquire more wealth for everybody, GNP per capita, everybody should have more. We say no, we want to have more health for everybody. So suppose that an income transfer can improve the health, education, life expectancy, capability of others, of some, without harming others, exactly on the lines of Pareto. Then we will say that this is a welfare improving proposition. And now, if you think of the 8 people who have more than 3.5 billion, do you think that their health, education or welfare is improved by all that money? No. That excess money only gives them power to manipulate the lives of others, and it is not good for them. So actually taxing them and providing wealth to those who need it would be an essential aspect of this vision. So actually, if we follow this vision, then we would not want to press for growth. We would want to say that, you see, people who have studied the issue say that these rising standards of living are harmful, produce a positive externality, because people get used to any standard of living. So that forms their normal base. So if we pursue a higher standard, that forces us to work harder to achieve those goods, and yet our happiness is not increased. This is the famous Easterlin paradox. So the Quran gives us enlightenment about that. It says that we should not envy others, we should not covet what belongs to others. Instead, we should give to others, and we should give even if we are ourselves hungry. So this is a reversal of the utility maximization concept, and it leads to greater welfare, both empirically and from ideological point of view. So it is individuals need to change their attitude toward life instead of trying to reach higher and higher standards of living, which is just an illusion, because what happens is that if we all pursue higher standards of living, everybody works hard all their life and everybody has twice as many goods as they did, and the level of happiness is exactly the same. As Easterlin found out empirically, that for 100 years people pursued wealth, people pursued this Keynesian idea, and nobody got any happier as a result. So what does human happiness come from? Well, it turns out that after people started investigating this question in the aftermath of Easterlin, they found that happiness does not come from consumption. It comes from character, it comes from community, it comes from social networks. Today we are all so busy pursuing wealth that we have no time for our families, our friends, our social relationships, and as a result, Lane has written a book called How Market Economies Lead to Loss of Happiness. And that's what happens. I mean, you pursue things which are meaningless and you leave things which are meaningful. So one of the gifts that Islam gave to the world was the idea of collective responsibility. So in a secular society, the only collective action possible is by the government, because the society is divided. People have different visions, so you can't expect collective action from the society. So Islam offers a different way of achieve. So if you want to do any social welfare, then you say the government must do it, because nobody else will. Everybody is an individual, they are pursuing self-interest. But in Islam, we are all responsible collectively. If there is any child in Pakistan who is hungry, then it's my job to make sure that he has food, clothing, housing. So Muslim societies for 1,000 years accomplished this through the institution of waqf. People who had excess money built awqaf, and these awqaf you used to feed the hungry, take care of widows, orphans, do a vast range, thousands of social functions were performed. Because the vision of the society is that any wealth that is over my needs, excess, belongs to others who need it. The vision was not that if I have more, I should get even more, which is the capitalist vision. So what are the obstacles to launching this revolution? Well, modern society came into being by ruthlessly crushing traditional society. It was not a peaceful coexistence. And so, to the extent that we are living in a market society, we have been conditioned to think in ways that are very anti-social. We have been trained to look out for number one. We have been trained that, every day we see these ads about how a man is enjoying life without regards for others. We are trained to think that if you have a meal for 10,000 rupees in Serena and the waiter who is serving you, his child doesn't have the medicine to buy to save his life, that's fine. You're not responsible for him. But the fact is that this is not how human beings are. Human beings are built to be generous. Empirical findings from psychology show that human beings derive more happiness from helping others than they do by stuffing their stomachs, which is what economics teaches you. So, it's not possible to make gradual changes. That is, we make small patchwork changes on a market society to get back to a traditional society. Just like the market society came into existence by a war, so a traditional society can only be brought back, the reversal can only be done by a war. But this war is not a physical war. It is not fought with guns and tanks. It is an ideological war. The central battle that we need to fight is a war of ideas. So, in this battle of ideas, a most powerful tool of the poor and the rich, most powerful tool of the rich and the wealthy and the powerful has been what I will call ET1%. ET1% is what is ordinarily called economic theory, which is taught in colleges and universities and which we all learned if we were in economics. This ET1% is not, as it claims to be, a positive theory about the real world. It is just a piece of propaganda which is designed to strengthen these and justify the privileges that the rich enjoy. So this ideology, which we have been taught to believe is a positive theory, has to be replaced. This is the major battle that has to be fought by an ET90%, an economic theory which looks out for the interests of the bottom 90%. So what is ET1%? Let me explain further. Marx said that capitalism works not by the force of the capitalist, not by because they have the guns and the sticks. It works because the capitalists persuade the laborers that his exploitation is necessary and just. And this is exactly like this. ET1% persuades the bottom 90% that our being hungry and our starving and our being exploited is necessary for the system to work. So 81% works by persuading the masses that modern capitalism works by natural economic laws. There are economic laws which we cannot resist. If the economic law says that somebody is hungry, then there's nothing you can do. These laws cannot be opposed. Furthermore, it argues that this economic law produces just and fair outcomes. Everybody gets the marginal product, so people get what they produce, what they deserve. Furthermore, ET1% says that this is an efficient distribution. This system is best for everyone. It creates wealth, it creates wonderful outcomes, and everybody benefits. So it has three normative, strong propositions which are used to brainwash the masses into believing that this system is best for everyone's interests. So, just to illustrate what I am saying, that economic theory is actually the soft power of the 1%, I will show you this picture of the income distribution. See, this is the share of the top 10%. So if you look up to 1940, you see that the top 10% are riding high. That's because classical economic theory is exactly, as I said, ET1%. By benefiting from that theory, they enjoy wealth. And now 1940 is the break caused by World War II. After that war, Keynesian economics came into existence as a consequence of the Great Depression. Keynesian economics is not actually ET90% as I would call it, but it is still, it says one thing only. It's highly capitalist, in fact. But it says one thing which is in favor of the bottom 90%. And that thing is that Keynes said that market does not eliminate unemployment. So we, the government, should look out after the laborer, the interests of the unemployed. So this one piece of theory was enough to change the balance. And if you look at the share of the bottom top 10%, it falls quite a bit in the period between 1940 and 1980. So this 40 years was a golden era of prosperity in Europe. Piketty also picks this up, that there was this one period in which capitalism didn't work as expected. And that's because capitalist theory was broken for a while. But while this was going on, the capitalists were working very hard in the background to patch up their theories and to attempt a new takeover, which happened in 1980s with the Reagan-Thatcher revolution and the ascent of the Chicago School. And as soon as the Chicago School deregulation, liberalization, privatization came into being, you see that the fortunes of the 1% skyrocketed, and they continue to do so because the theory continues to dominate. Even after the global financial crisis, there has been no change in the theories that are being taught at the leading universities. So ET1% we can call the weapons of mass deception, because they use ideas which are simply not true, and they deceive people into believing them. So one of the key ideas is that scarcity is the cause of misery. We know that billions are hungry. Why are they hungry? Well, because there's not enough food. This is just a lie. If we grow more food, already there's enough food in the world to feed the hungry. So they tell you to look in directions different from the ones that needs to be looked at. This GNP per capita, this is also a lie. Quantity theory of many solo. I'll go into these in a little bit greater detail. So is scarcity the fundamental problem that economists keep telling us? Such a huge lie, a monstrous lie. Jeffrey Sachs in End of Poverty says that it will take about $175 billion a year to to take care of all basic needs of everybody on the planet. Now, how much is 175 billion? Well, he calculated that it's 0.7% of the GDP of 30 OECD countries. So if they just put this aside, that will be enough to end poverty. So there's no scarcity. 175 billion is about 15% of the 1.2 trillion military expense being done on the world. So if we just stop fighting each other, we can end poverty. No scarcity. Healthcare costs of obesity are estimated at $210 billion. So if we just stop eating too much, maximizing our consumption, we can end poverty. The global cosmetics industry is $445 billion. So ladies, if we stop beautifying ourselves by 133%. So where is the scarcity? Where is the scarcity? Now, what Easterlin said is that if we chase growth, we have been chasing growth successfully. We have doubled and tripled and quintupled, and our standards of living are 10 times what they were a century ago. So has all this growth eliminated scarcity? No, scarcity has become even larger. They took a survey of 200 millionaires and asked at least, and they were very unhappy on all dimensions, but they said, at least one thing, you have enough money. Said, no, we don't have enough money. We need at least another few million to achieve financial stability. So, pursuit of growth is just an illusion. Allah Ta'ala says that, this mata'ul ghurur, it's pursuit of an illusion. So what is the solution to the problem of scarcity? The problem is, the solution is empathy. Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu said that, how can I eat refined bread when there are other people who are hungry who cannot get this? So if in my heart I have the feeling that if there is somebody hungry, I have compassion for him, this is the idea that that will get rid of the scarcity, not accumulation of wealth. So, another ET1% weapon of mass deception is the GNP per capita. Now, this is a weapon of mass deception. Everybody is pursuing it. We all look at this number. But actually, what is GNP per capita? It says, the wealthy people say, don't look at the amount of wealth in our hands. First, what you do in calculating GNP per capita is imagine that this wealth is distributed equally to everybody. So, this illusion, you take this money and you give it equally to everybody. That is, you divide by the population. And then you say, this is the GNP per capita. This is a great subterfuge. Now, you look at the GNP, suppose we look at the wealth before we distribute to everybody. Then that's the picture. The bottom 20%, their income hasn't changed at all. The second 20%, their income is also flat. What has happened at the top 20%, and they have been gaining. So the rich have been gaining, but of course no one notices, because when you take GNP per capita, this picture is disappears. So the idea that the quantity theory of money is a whale, every student repeats very wisely, profoundly, that money is a whale. They don't understand that they have been deceived. This idea that money is a whale, it's itself a whale. It prevents you from looking at how money functions and how it goes to the pockets of the wealthy, how it is taken out of the pockets of the poor. Money is all important. It's the lifeblood of the economy. If you don't study money, you will never find out how the rich get rich. ET1%, in the olden times, they used to have land in the production function as capital, labor, and land. But then Henry George came along and said, these lands and rentiers, they earn money without doing any work. So they exploit. So then in a counter maneuver, they merged the land with the capital so you wouldn't see it. So now there's no land in the... Similarly, the idea that the production function and the marginal productivity theory, this was built to counter Marx. Marx said that the capitalists exploit labor. So the marginal productivity theory says, no, the capitalist earns what he deserves, and the laborer earns what he deserves. Now, this idea you can contest on theoretical grounds. Joan Robinson did. There is no such thing as capital, actually. But leave that aside. Basically, the issue is that the consequence of this is that the rich, because they are the most productive members of society. This is actually widely believed and trumpeted by Trump, who has used it to enact the tax cuts, which are the greatest boon for the already wealthy. And why? Because the wealthy are the greatest producers of wealth, so they deserve these breaks. The poor are hungry, they will just eat. So how can we launch a revolution? Well, there's the Marxist solution. We should unite the laborers and fight against the chains of capitalists. This does not seem to work very well for two reasons. One is that, all right, maybe we can successfully organize a revolution, but eventually, when it comes to ruling, only a few people will be in power. And even if they come from the bottom classes, they will end up acting just like the top 1%. So this solution somehow doesn't work. So the Islamic solution is rather different. It says that let us create a culture of generosity, create kindness, compassion, teach the rich to feel, instead of destroying the rich, understand that the rich are also human beings. They were also born of mothers. They have hearts. Appeal, create good instincts in them. This is how traditional societies used to work. Encourage the use of wealth to eradicate poverty. This is what the Quran says. Let those who have excess wealth give to the poor. Discourage excessive accumulation of wealth. Persuade millionaires that, accumulating wealth is an illusion. It will not buy you happiness. This is actually true. The richest people in the world, surveys show, are the unhappiest. Tell them you spend. You see, this is what, if you read Dickens, A Christmas Carol, this is what the man learns, the miser, that he gives money to the his poor worker, and he feels much happier than he did with that. So teaching them how to be good people, teaching everyone how to be a good person. How did Islam create this revolution? Now you see, this is the greatest thing. Yesterday we heard about the stages of Rostow's stage of growth. People have studied how over the course of 300 years Britain developed and divided it into stages, and asked that we should also follow this trajectory, and 300 years later we will also be rich like Britain. Well, that's pretty unlikely. But what about the greatest revolution in human history took place when the Prophet ﷺ came to the ignorant and backward Arab, and within 30 years they were leaders of the world, and they created a civilization the likes which lasted for 1,000 years, and which was a very civilized and gentle and caring and responsible. It had at its heart, the model was excellence and conduct, good akhlaq. Prophet ﷺ was mercy to all mankind. The mercy is at the heart of this. All men and women are brothers and sisters. Born of Adam and Hawa, we are all equal and we are responsible for each other. Power, these are revolutionary ideas. Power is not given so that you can exploit others. It is given for you to help the oppressed and weak and prevent them from being exploited and oppressed. Wealth is not given for you to extract. It is given for you to help others in need. The leader of the nation is the servant of the people. These are all revolutionary ideas that change the world. All of the creation of God is the family of God. The one who serves the people is performing the highest form of worship. So the formula for success today is the same as it was 1400 years ago, but people are searching in the wrong direction. That's where I will end. Thank you.